Welcome to today's video. Today's video, I'm going to be doing my absolute best to try and explain the MCU timeline with the TVA new concepts that we have got. So I'm going to look at the timeline and try and make sense of what they created in the TVA with their new rules about things that are meant to be and meant to happen and being reset, sacred timelines, all that sort of stuff, and how to make sense of it, basically. Because I think there is a way we can make sense of our timeline. However, there's major problems. There is major problems with it, and I'm going to explain the problems and some of the questions I now have regarding those problems. So let me know in the comments below, what are your theories on the timeline? How do you make sense of it? Remember, this is just how I interpreted. I sat down, did research, put it all together, and this is the only way I can make sense of it. So let me know if you have any other ways in the comments below. Smash that like button, hit subscribe as well, and let's jump straight into this video. So let's start off and look at our current MCU timeline. I'm going to just look at the Infinity Saga. So I'm looking at where we begin with Captain America, the first Avenger. Captain Marvel's the second one, so on and so on and so on, until we get to Endgame. I've left Far From Home, WandaVision, The Falcon and Winter Soldier out of this one at the moment because they don't really have any relevance to what is going on and what I'm about to speak. I'm strictly going to speak about this period because with all the time travel and that, and now the new TVA laws, it's a complete mindfuck. Like, just to be serious with everyone, it is a complete mindfuck. The time travel has absolutely screwed things, and then adding these new rules in, it's mind-blowing. I mean, my brain hurts from all the research. So we're just going to jump straight into it. So, what are the new laws and stuff that the TVA have created? Now, when we're watching the first episode of Loki, we get a new set of laws and rules of reality and time. There was a big multiverse battle of all the timelines fighting to become the major timeline. In this, as they were all branching off each other and battling each other and fighting each other, whatever that means, they don't really explain how the battles occurred, but they're all vying for that one spot. This could potentially destroy everything. So in come our three big bad boys, the Timekeepers, who come in, smashed them all together to create one big sacred timeline, and they then created the TVA to watch over the timeline so that nothing ever veers stray and never creates a nexus event that could cause another big multiverse of timeline battles, wars, whatever you want to call them, that could destroy all of time that we know. So basically, that is the whole concept of their rules brought in. They also brought in that what is meant to happen has to happen at all times. So this is where it gets really tricky. So now we move, I want to take you guys back to 2012 when we watched the Avengers movie. So we're watching the Avengers movie in our timeline for the very first time. We're watching it. At the end of this movie, Loki leaves with Thor. We know that as a fact. He leaves with Thor because then Thor the Dark World happens, so on, so on, and so on, and so on. So that all had to happen. When we get to Endgame, however, when the Avengers go back in time, we get that scene at the Avengers HQ when they battled Loki in the 2012 one. Tony is about to walk away with the Tesseract, gets hit by Hulk, and drops the Tesseract right in front of Loki's feet. This is where things get a bit dicey. In the 2012 Avengers movie, that all apparently happened. That all happened. The only difference is, in our film and our timeline, Loki never ever picked up the Tesseract and used it. But in Endgame, this Loki, this version of this 2012 one, picked it up and then vanished out of sight. So, he was not meant to do that. So the way that I interpret this is, this has already all occurred before, because there has to be an original timeline. And I don't believe our MCU is at the actual timeline, because this is where it gets tricky. Because if it is the original timeline, we're watching the first ever development of the Sacred Timeline, our events, then Loki picking up that Tesseract is meant to happen. That's what this is where it gets really, really tricky. Because that's meant to happen. Because it's the first ever Sacred Timeline. When they do go back in time, Loki's supposed to pick that up and zap out then. So, but yet, then Loki's there at the end of 2012. So it sort of contradicts itself if it's the first ever original timeline. So therefore it can't. These events have had to already occur. And our MCU timeline is like, say, the 30th in line or something like that to this. Because it's just in a loop constantly. So 10 minutes ago, I got to go back and observe myself as well, and the same thing's going to happen to what I just did. I'm going to start this video and talk again. That's basically what it is. So that's why when you look at Loki taking the Tesseract, that's not meant to happen, because at the end of the 2012 Avengers in our timeline, he's there with Thor. So as these events all occur in the original Avengers movie, our Loki never ever picks up that Tesseract and uses it. So that's what's meant to happen. But when Loki makes a different decision, he causes a nexus effect. Hence the reason why the TVA come in to stop him from creating that nexus event that could cause all holy chaos and destroy time itself. So that's basically how our MCU timeline works with regarding how Loki leaves and stuff like that. That's all pretty, you know, it's pretty easy level stuff. You know, you can sort of see, okay, I get how that works. But, there is a but, with all this, there is major issues, plot holes, and problems. And let's have a look at some of those problems. Let's start off with the 2014 timeline. How does this timeline now work? Because if we look at the rules that the TVA have set, by Loki causing a nexus effect, he has to be taken and reset. But, why is it no one is talking about the 2014 timeline that is now affected dramatically without Thanos and his army and Gamora and Nebula being there? Because if you go to that 2014 timeline and you're right there at that moment, Guardians doesn't happen. It does happen, but it happens in a very different way. Because there's no Thanos there. Guardians 2... who knows what if that even happens, because it all depends on the first Guardians. What happens with that now, with no Thanos and that? Does Ronan end up doing what he's supposed to do? Then we get to, like, Infinity War and Endgame. That doesn't happen. Like, all these things don't happen. There's a nexus effect right there. Boom. Why are the TVA not talking about that? That's a problem. That's a plot hole. Why does that timeline not apply to the rule of the TVA? The Avengers going back in time is also a problem. Why is it a problem? Because they did say the Avengers going back in time is supposed to happen. That's what's meant to happen in the timeline, because that's what the events beforehand happened. However, by them going back in time, they've royally fucked up the 2014 timeline. So that's a problem. They are causing a nexus effect themselves. They caused the 2014 timeline to collapse on itself because there's no Thanos. That's a problem. Why? So Loki is technically right in the first episode when he says the Avengers are the reason they're meddling with time. Why aren't they here? They should be here because they are meddling with time and they are causing nexus events in the 2014 timeline. Cap going back in time at the end of Endgame is also a major problem because he stays back in the 1970s. When he goes back to drop that last stone off, the space stone, he stays there. This is a problem because it causes a nexus effect as well. Because in our timeline, Peggy thinks Cap's dead. Everyone thinks Cap's dead. But yet we find out that he's actually not. He did start a family with Peggy, even though we know Peggy grew up and married someone else. Nexus effect. I'm sorry, but that's another problem. Gamora being in our timeline is also a major problem. And we're going to get into that one as well because I'm going to look at some of the questions I now have regarding these problems created by the TVA and their new laws. Is Gamora now a variant as well? Because Loki, he chose to pick up the Tesseract and go out, which wasn't meant to happen. So why is it Gamora can jump timelines from 2014 into our timeline and isn't considered a variant? Shouldn't she be held captive at the TVA as well? Because she's caused a Nexus effect. This is a question I want to be answered. Probably not going to be answered, and if it isn't, it will be criticized. I can tell you that now, because you can't have one rule. It's a plot hole, because you can't have one rule for Loki and a rule for someone else. Because it doesn't work with the laws you've created. The 2014 timeline. Are they going to address it? Are they going to say, why is that timeline allowed to not run its natural course? I don't understand that. That's another one I want to know. Like, talk to me about the 2014 timeline, because that timeline's really fucked up, because there's no Thanos. So it's never ever going to be identical to our timeline, but they are saying that they're there to keep the timeline, the secret timeline, identical. But someone along the line has meddled with the 2014 one, and it's never ever going to be the same as the secret timeline. So they need to address that question as well. Is Cap now a variant as well? Because by him going back in time, he's created a Nexus event as well. He's creating a parallel, whatever you want to call it, a different timeline, because it shouldn't work. Because it's never ever stated in our whole thing that he was there. Peggy thought he was dead the whole entire time. Can we address this one as well? Because technically Cap should be there as well, getting reset. The Avengers! They destroyed the 2014 timeline. They messed it up. They caused the biggest, and I mean the biggest, it's 10 times worse than what Loki did by picking up the Tesseract. They caused a huge Nexus event by destroying a lot of that timeline. Why aren't they there? Why are they not being held captive and being reset as well? They need to address that question as well. So that is basically how I view the timelines, and that our MCU timeline can work, but there is other things at play here. Like the whole 2014 timeline is messed up. The whole 1970 timeline is messed up as well. Where is the TVA on them? Well, I mean, this is the problem when you have time travel and these new laws and stuff like that. Look, I have no problem with them having the TVA laws about, you know, this has already happened. What happens is meant to happen. I have no problems with that, because I still feel the stakes in the MCU and that, because I don't know anything that's happening after Far From Home. Where, say for instance, if I was a first-time viewer of the MCU and I watched Endgame first, right? And I knew the whole outcome of Endgame and everything like that, then I went back and started re-watching it all. There would be no stakes for me, because I know how it all ends. The fact is, we don't know how the story ends. So we only know up to Far From Home. So anything beyond there, I have no problems with it saying that everything that happens beyond there is meant to happen. I have no problems with that, because to me, I still have the stakes in that, and yeah, that's fine by me, because I don't have a problem with that. Some people do, that's fair. If they have a problem with that, that's fine by me. I'm not going to hear and criticize you guys for being wrong or anything like that. If that's how you guys feel, that's how you feel. But this is the easiest way I can understand how the new rules apply to the MCU timeline. But there's still two timelines that are really messed up that need to be answered. Two particular characters that need to be questioned. Are they variants as well? Because they're actually doing stuff that are worse than Loki. And the Avengers. What's to go with them? So let me know in the comments below, what are your theories and stuff like that about the MCU timeline and that. It's all mine. It's all mine. It's a big mindfuck. But let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts? Smash it down there. Smash that like button. Hit subscribe as well. I'll see you guys next video. Peace out.